Sir, please enable screen sharing. Greetings to all of you. Warm welcome to the Endeavor Open Mock DILR section analysis. In fact, we are doing the entire Mock 5 section, Mock 5 analysis. However, we'll start with the DILR section. So I will take you through a brief analysis of this particular section. I guess all of you had a pleasant time and good experience of writing this particular mock. Here we go. A couple of things probably you might have to keep in mind before you consider this analysis. Could be this. First, you may have to introspect and think, am I a beginner to this particular test series or to the DILR preparation as such? So you could be your understanding of VARC could be different from QA, and which could be different from DILR. So first introspection is first we need to understand that where are we? Am I a beginner to this? For DILR section, which means I just started my preparation on DILR, or I am at the intermediate level. So for example, all right, so to our students at Endeavor, so who is a beginner? Anybody who has just done, anybody who has not done much of formal preparation on DILR, to the ones, those who have done just about maybe two basic lectures of DI. That's a first and second DI lecture. So I could consider them as the kind of a beginners. You just have a small orientation to no orientation. Who's at the intermediate level? The ones who has done the complete DI module, and then they have done a complete DI lectures, their modules and their DI handouts, and could be about just started off with your marathons, maybe a couple of lectures of marathons, right? So 1 or 2 lectures of marathons, I would say that, okay, you are at kind of intermediate stage of your preparation. So what about advanced? Advanced in the sense like, no, it's fine. I'm done with all my basic preparation as well as my marathons. Kind of, I'm at the verge of completing the marathons. Now I say that, okay, you are no more an intermediate. You are keeping your foot into the advanced. That's the first thing. So therefore, while doing the analysis, you need to understand that where am I? All right, and then you need to consider, probably I'll come back to this at some stage, say that, okay, what beginners, expectation from the beginners, expectation from intermediate, and could be expectation from advanced, right? So therefore, nothing to panic when I take through the discussion. You might have to understand what is my current position, and then therefore, let now how analysis for me, what should be my expectation from this test. Right, a couple of other things that you also might have to understand from this particular test by now could be, okay, one, you need to be good at, you need to spend some time in planning out that particular section. So if you look at all at the beginning of the section, there is always a question paper, view question paper. There is a small tab which comes at the right hand side at the lower bottom, so where you can actually view the entire paper, right? Question paper can be viewed in the sense the section can be viewed. You might not be able to view other section, but sure, you would be able to view this particular section. You might have to go through it, consider some time reading, maybe about anywhere between 5 to 7 minutes of reading, couple of sets, could be about a good way could be about reading about 3 to 4 sets, just to quickly understand, maybe 1 minute per set. That's a good time. 60 seconds is in fact a good time. Those who have been trying it, you understand that 60 seconds is a lot of time, right? To understand a particular set, which means to get an idea of that, okay, am I familiar? What is that you are trying to understand? Basically, you are saying that, am I familiar? All right, now, so you need to selection while you are doing planning and selection and sequencing. So what you are considering, am I familiar with these kind of sets? Is there anywhere the familiarity? If no familiarity, is it my strength? All right, for some of you, the number crunching can be strength. You are very, very good at calculation. That's a pure DI you will rock on the graphs, etc. Or it could be on the reasoning based DI. So some of you are good at reasoning skills. All right, now you might have such background, all right, now from your, you might be solving puzzles from your childhood days in the sense like right from your high school or whatever. So that some of you would have developed good reasoning skills. All right, some of you might be good at pure LR skills. It cannot be all DI based reasoning. Rather, it could be a complete LR that is about the arrangement kind of sets, organizing the data and arranging the kind of sets. Now, these are the three. All right, now basically you have to understand that when you say from my strength perspective, I may not be familiar to something, but is there some inherent strength, right? That is second thing, all right, that you may have to understand, all right, while you're planning out, selecting and sequencing. Third one is probably, all right, now, so after all this, when you're taking some risks towards the end, okay, my familiar sets are done. I don't find all right now my strength, whatever the sets, couple of sets are done. So now how should I decide further on my planning? Are there certain MCQs or non-MCQs? Already, if the particular set has all 4 questions of non-MCQ, it's a huge risk. Probably if you overlook one information, probably entire thing, already entire amount of time, maybe about 10 minutes of time or 8 minutes of time that you are spending, there will not be a reconfirmation. All right, therefore that's another thing that you might have to consider. All right, should I go for with question set with an MCQ or should I go for a set with non-MCQ? Because even if there are a couple of MCQs and non-MCQs in the same set, it is still better off. But if there are no MCQs, it's totally theta question, type in the answer types, or non-MCQ questions, then that might be a risk, because it is neither your strength nor very familiar. So therefore, it might be a risk. Therefore, that's you may have to understand that, okay, should I take that kind of risk or should I go with the MCQs and pursue? These are the couple of things probably you may have to keep in mind, before you consider this evaluation or a strategy for a paper. Right. And then similarly, once you enter into a particular set, you should understand that all questions in the set need not be easy. All need not be difficult. Author also would have played against you, saying that, okay, I will keep one easy question in the set, maybe one difficult question in the set, and could be about a couple of questions which are reasonably doable kind of, right? Now, possible. Therefore, you need to approach with this kind of set, which means whenever you look at 4 questions, probably you click, look at all 4 questions on that particular set and figure out that, hey, is there a sitter? Is there a question now which is very easy? It's just that I understand data superficially, yet I'm able to do. Now, is there that kind of set? That is something that you may have to understand. Is there that kind of question? There may be some easy question. There may be one or difficult question. Despite understanding that particular set, it might cost you a lot more time. It could be difficult. There may be a couple of medium questions. You should be open to these thoughts while you are trying to answer the paper, right? Now, so while considering the analysis as well, these are the things that we may have to keep it in mind. Very importantly, first you need to understand that, am I at the beginning of my preparation? Am I a beginner? Am I at the intermediate level of my preparation? Or I am at the advanced level of my preparation? And you got to set right kind of expectation for yourself, right, without really getting dejected or getting disappointed about your performance. Now, your disappointment or you won or you are done well with your performance depends on what stage of preparation you are at. Of course, we are at the end of by the end of the season, we want all of you to be at the advanced level of learning, no doubt about it. Let's take a look at each set at a time. So technically, what you should have done, spend about 5 to 6 minutes of time, take a look at first 3-4 sets, and then figure out that which is the most familiar set or what seems to be your strength. You could kind of start well from there, right? Yeah. So if you look at the first set, those who are at the intermediate level of your preparation, for example, this set can be well done. If you're at the intermediate level, because you might have come across this kind of logic somewhere while you are doing your DIHO handouts, or it could be at the beginning of your preparation in the first 2 lectures of your marathons, you would have come across a similar kind of logic. Therefore, you might feel that, okay, you're kind of familiar to this particular set. Therefore, now this is one of the sets probably you might have shortlisted. The point here is there is a sample question I have projected, which I've highlighted in yellow color. So what can be said regarding the statements here? One also has to be a little familiar with usage of conditional sentences, if-then kind of sentences. If someone is not quite familiar with if-then kind of sentences, despite getting the core of this particular logic, yet you might pick up wrong answer choice. That is something probably you might have to keep in mind while doing this. Therefore, familiarity is better. If you have done something like this statement evaluation kind of question, statement 1 and 2 being connected by if then kind of statements in the answer choices, because it says that if one statement is correct, then the other is necessarily correct. All it things like that. Therefore, all it if then how the conditional works, a little bit of understanding, very superficial and basic understanding of conditionals is required as well. Otherwise, chances that probably you might end up picking the wrong answer options despite cracking the logic behind this particular set. Pretty simple set with 4 people masked as WXYZ. There were 4 employees. All right, their names were there. Sinha, Sharma, all right, Chada, some names were there. All right, but then they were masked as WXYZ, and some hints were given. All right, based on this, based on this, we were not able to fix which employee is who, but there were some cases which are being dealt. All right, you might have understood that. So therefore, all right, approximately this might take about 10 questions. You might be successful in addressing about 3 questions, right? About 10 minutes, about 3 questions could be a good time. See, again, as I said, that question selection also important. If there is one particular question type which is troubling you a lot, it's all right. All right, you can park it aside, or you can park it for some other day, some other time. And you may say that, hey, let me pick, these are the 3 questions, seems to be familiar. 3 questions seems to be easily understood by me after understanding this set. Work out with these 3 sets. There is no hard and fast rule that if there are 4 questions there, I have to spend time across all 4 questions. Not necessarily, right? If 3 questions are making quite immediate sense to you, answer these 3 questions, and then from there you can move on, right? This is one of the sets, definitely should be doable by intermediate, those who are at the intermediate level of your preparation. Right, 5 to 8, this should have been tried by everybody because it's a simple bar graph, right? So everybody, all right, now it doesn't matter. There are certain, this is a set where simple bar graph is presented. Sure, reading the data probably, all right, now those lines, taking the actual number, proper numbers, all right, now that's one of the skills which is expected out of this. All right, in the sense like, if you're looking for, so because the bars are ending somewhere in between, so therefore you need to considering it as, hey, should I consider this as 11,000? Should I consider it as 10,500? Numbers like that, you need to be a little careful while picking out these particular numbers. All right, that is something, all right, which is something you need to be a little careful about in some questions. Again, all right, 3 out of questions were kind of quickly doable. Let's assume, all right, 1 question might require for the depth of kind of calculation, closer calculation. You might be a little careful with that. Already you have to approach it with that particular mindset that, hey, 3 of them should be quickly doable. Maybe 1 question might ask for a little deeper calculation. With the use of calculator, should I go ahead and attack it, or should I park it for some other day? That's a call you might take. Therefore, I may say that, okay, about 3 questions doable in about 8 minutes time, maybe plus or minus 2, depends on your calculation speed, how well you can quickly approximate, understand the data. But I would rather say about already 8 minutes, about 3 questions is a good bet. All right, now I'm not denying that you should not do 4 questions, but always be in a lookout for, hey, which are the 3 doable questions out here. Even if author wants to create 1 difficult question on this particular set, there must be already about 3 doable ones. Let me already now look for them, finish it, instead of already spending too much time on 1 question which is going deeper. That's something probably you might have to keep in mind. Okay, so there is another one where again the sequencing, all right, there is an assembly line, all right, there seems to be sequence of events which has to go through. Now, those who are familiar with the sequencing kind of sets already in the past, all right, then you may understand that it's about maximum minima. What is the maximum time to roll out a vehicle, or the minimum time to roll out a vehicle? Some people, those who are familiar already with maximum minima, it's a welcome thought. You may say that, okay, fine, I can do this because I understand that how the authors are going to trick me with respect to maxima and minima. So therefore, all right, now if you're not familiar with maxima minima, you should not take it up. But if you're familiar with maxima minima, sure, you can take it up. And again, all right, if there is one question which is frisking you too much, which is asking for too depth of understanding, probably that one question you can kind of leave. Otherwise, you can do every other question out there. So good thing here is the first 3 sets, when you look at it, there is hardly any non-MCQ questions. Most of them were MCQ question. Therefore, there is always a reassurance and reconfirmation on your answer choices as well. So whatever the numbers that you are getting, there is a reassurance. The point here is you get into a particular set, but if you are not able to do it, don't worry. If it might have taken about 3 minutes of your time, roughly about, doesn't matter. Look for some other set. Look for some other set. Technically, when you're looking at these particular sets, the planning time, the whole of planning time can be about 5 to 7 minutes. And there may be one particular set in which already you might not be comfortable. Therefore, you take about your 3 minutes of your time back off. You will back off after 3 minutes or so. So therefore, you can say that, hey, 10 minutes goes in planning and uncertainties, the buffering, all of that, right? That may be about 10 minutes. You get an active time of 50 minutes. Remember, right? Now, active time of 50 minutes is good. Therefore, you need to identify the sets which can be done in about 8 to 10 minutes time. All right, so that all right, now somebody who's at the advanced level, you will be able to crack somewhere closer to 5 to 6 sets. Right? That's a reality out here. So therefore, you should always say that, hey, execution time is about 10 minutes. The rest, all it now, rest sometime always goes in planning, the buffering, that all it now. So maybe all it maybe turning back from that particular set, trying to identify a better set. Remember that, all right now. So these times are there. No need to get frustrated about these kind of time. That's the nature of journey in logic, LR and DI, or DI, DI and LR. That's the nature of this particular journey. Fine. Okay. So this particular set, those who were comfortable with maximum minima, the thought of maximum minima, I would rather say that, okay, even before you attempt a particular set, take a look at the question. What is the expectation from the author, right? Whoever is from this particular set, many questions can be created, right? What is the expectation? Try and understand. All right, if the maximum, minima, then question yourself, am I comfortable with this, finding out these ranges? Do I understand the crux behind why authors ask for these ranges? What can be a catch when they ask for a range? If you're clear about that fundamental, you can always go for it. There were answer options here for your help. All right, there were definitely answer options here for your help, right? Yeah. So therefore, this month you could have spent well about 10 minutes of your time and cracked about 3 to 4 questions. All right, that was kind of doable, this particular sets. In fact, the packaging, if you look at the packaging perspective, the first 3 sets were well packaged in kind of like, they were building confidence within you, right? There comes a set, right? Then there is another set. It's a pure LR kind of set. That there is a pure LR. There is hardly any number crunching on this particular set, right? So therefore, before you decide this kind of sets, you know that, okay, the risk here could be the very first question when you read, all it here in the yellow, you can understand in how many ways can this person answer this particular paper. Even if I get 1 or 2 ways wrong, which means if I cannot think of one particular case, there may be a possibility that I might mess up the entire set. If I get everything right, all right, then there is all right, then probably all right now. So therefore, you understand that once you read the questions, you will understand, hey, I need to pay focus on the proper arrangement. I need to ensure that I get all my cases right. That is the risk. Probably even if I miss out on 1 or 2 cases here, because even if you look at these numbers, it is not a 2-case strategy kind of. All right, the numbers are suggesting that, hey, it is 3, 4, 5, 8. All right, so which means it can go as much as 8 as well, right? So therefore, once you read this particular question, you realize, hey, should I go for it or should I park it for another day? Should I mark it and come back to it at some other time? All right, this is the call that one has to take. All right, the questions were suggestive of this because every other question was starting with ifs and buts. All right, if this, if that kind of. Right now, therefore, what can be the maximum number of times choice B could be the answer option, things like that. All right, therefore these are the high risk propositions, might take lesser time, but this depends on the confidence. All right, this depends, is a ball of confidence here. Do you really have the confidence? Are you risk averse? Or you are a risk seeker? Can you want to take that particular risk? Now again, definitely this is not the first set that you do. Once you say that, hey, I already did about 3 sets, probably you come to this kind of sets, because first you will pocket some points in the first 30 minutes or 35 minutes. What you will say is, hey, what are my guaranteed points? First, let me get my guaranteed points. Then let me take certain amount of risk. Right now, because it is not 1-2 case kind of strategy, they're looking at the answer options. You know that it's a high number of cases coming out here because the choices are suggestive of it. Therefore, you may say that, hey, let me pocket certain guaranteed points. Then let me come back and check if there is nothing better that I can do. I will get into this particular set. Could be like that. It could as well be easy. But when you are writing that particular set, that is the thought process in your mind. Right? Yeah. But seemingly, all right, now, so once you do this, if you get the number of cases right, everything falls in line, right? Now, everything falls in line. It is not a very familiar kind of logic, of course. All right, it's a nice set. It's not a very familiar kind of logic. All right, but then like, no, if you want to take a risk, not in the first half of the time, probably in the second half of the paper, you will take this kind of risk. Definitely, you will not take these kind of risk in the first 30 minutes. A little bit of risk, all right, but then it may pay high dividends as well. Right, yeah, that's this particular set. Then going here, there is a person who was trying to distribute the property, etc. Only risk with this particular question was, no, so there are some good thing about this, there is a bad thing about this. Hey, what was this? There was one information in the question. If you read this particular question out here, this was the common information. The twist was coming only after only in the question stem. That if that statement, if the value, read the question here in the yellow, what I highlighted in the yellow, if the value of the property distributed among this array, among these three individuals were 3:2:1, that was a static information in 3 out of 4 questions. See, unless you have the habit of reading certain questions, you will not understand the link between the questions. This was actually asking for it. Are you a kind of a person who kinds of also take a look at the expectation of the author? If you are seeking the expectation of the author, these numbers were static in the question stem. Now where I'm highlighted in the yellow, the question stem 3:2:1, 1:3:5. That was a static in 3 out of 4 questions on this particular set. Therefore, had you noticed it, probably you would have said that, okay, I can give a try to this, because this is another actual statement being considered. It looks like more a static part of it. If I can crack this static part, rest seems to be incidental. Based on the static part, there are 3 questions which we're churning out. The danger here is, if I don't crack that static part properly, there was not a single MCQ here to reconsider or confirm that, okay, your thought process seems to be right. So therefore, now there is a risk being all 4 questions were non-MCQs, theta questions. Therefore, even before you jump into this, you might have to consider that, hey, there is a risk. Therefore, now should I try? Shouldn't try? So these are the decisions that you might have to take. Right now, the good thing here was 3 questions were linked to the same data. That if data, 3 questions were linked to the same kind of numbers. That is whatever you see in this particular question, 3:2:1 and 1:3:5. That was the same data. 3 questions were linked. That is the welcome thought. But after the other thought also that lingers in your mind could be, hey, okay, what if I crack this part wrong? I don't have a reconfirmation. Again, this is a risk. Basically, what you are trying to say is, earlier set was a little bit of a risk. This is also a risk. You have to understand that, hey, I should not lift only risk-based set. That's a point I'm trying to make. What I'm trying to make about the point that I'm trying to make is, hey, this was a risk set. This is a risk set. They may be good. They may pay high dividends. Risk may pay high dividends, no doubt. But I cannot play my game only with the risks. Okay, I need certain reassurance as well. So therefore, I cannot pick all the sets in which I'm betting on the risk. I should not, right? That's a whole point out here. What I'm trying to make. Good set. All right, now good set. Had you notice it that part and get that get the bottom line right, core of the logic right. Good. It might take about 10 to 12 minutes. All right, it might take about 10 minutes, 10 odd minutes here, but then you will definitely able to do it. All right, but you will take little longer time here. All right, because you want to reassure that your thought process seems to be right, because all entire set was non-MCQ. Generally, non-MCQs who tend to work a little slower, meticulous, because all right, now there is no reconfirmation, and hence you tend to go slower. Therefore, non-MCQs, the questions with non-MCQs, the entire set has non-MCQ kind of questions, because of our overcautiousness, cost maybe about 2 minutes more. All right, that's a generally it costs about 2 minutes more than the paper with the MCQs. Same set with the MCQs might take 2 minutes lesser. That's something that you got to keep in mind. Okay, and there was another set out here, all right, very familiar one. All right, this is the kind of a set. If you are an intermediate kind of a preparation, all right, if you are at the intermediate stage of your preparation, you would be definitely already able to do this kind of sets. All right, this is a very welcome set. Probably this is one of them, because it's based on what? It's based on the averages, weighted averages, and the weight seems to be 1:1:1:1, because every the investment, he invested equal sum in all 3 of them. Therefore, all right, it's equally in all 4 companies. Therefore, the weighted average simply becomes a simple average, all right, because the weights are 1:1:1:1. So therefore, all right, now we can work with this. You might be able to close about 2 or 3 questions. All right, therefore, about 3 questions could be a good bet. If one question is probing you too much, probably you can shy away, you can stay away from that question, and maybe you can consider those 3 questions. All right, this is one of the most doable sets out here. Right, because it's simply based on the averages. Right, again, this is again another time wrap, again a high risk set. All right, there is a data, no doubt about it. But the point here is, all right, it looks like fine. Okay, I can do this particular set, correct. All right, but it's a very high risk set. Also, all right, now, so once you get into it, probably in this particular paper, this is one of the trickiest set as well. In this particular EOM, this is already a EOM. This is one of the most trickier set. Naturally, all right, now most of you have identified it. So therefore, all right, now this set also had all all non-MCQs, theta kind of questions. Therefore, mind would naturally revolt, mind would naturally stay back and set back and say that, okay, hey, this seems to be a all completely non-MCQ kind of set. Should I really take it up, right? Yeah. So probably, all right, now, so I would consider this as the last set to be done, last set to be done. Okay, all right now it looks exciting, it looks interesting kind of set. All right now, some sets may be interesting, but it might not be worth doing during the exam unless you don't have any better set to be considered, right? Yeah, something like that. So therefore, all right now, this was also most time consuming, over 12 minutes. Right now, this is also time consuming. Again, the time also increases because of the nature of questions. In the sense, had it been MCQs, definitely I will cut down the time by about 3-4 minutes. Because of the non-MCQs, you tend to go slow. You don't want to make a mistake because you have to type in the answer, right? You can type in any number from 0 to infinity. All right, I mean, I'm not necessarily 0 to infinity. You're getting my point. There is all right now the scope, the range is huge. Range is beyond 4 answer options, and there is no reconfirmation. And hence, all right, you tend to go kind of little slower with respect to this. Therefore, it also takes little more time. All right, it also takes a little more time. Okay, this was the last set. All right, last set, this was on the Venn diagram. All right, those who have done even the set theory from the Quant chapter, even if you have done the basic, that set theory where there was a little bit of maximum minimum which was involved there, a little bit of understanding, deeper understanding of set theory, not even the depth. All right, not even that kind of depth. All right, even if you have done your basics part of set theory right, all right, I'm sure, all right, now you would be in a position to do this particular set, right? This was one of the welcoming set here on the set theory. It is a Venn diagram for 3. It was a kind of welcoming. So definitely not for the beginners. I'm not saying it is for the beginners, but then if you are not a beginner, even the beginners can give a try, because the set theory is something already done in the schools as well, if not, right? Therefore, even the beginners can give a try here. So therefore, I would say that even for the beginners, there were always about 3 sets sitting there. About 3 sets were sitting there even for the beginners. Think about it. All right, now do the micromanagement, in the sense, if you do the proper time management, you might say that, okay, you might consider about 10 minutes for planning. Even if you're a beginner, take 10 minutes, take 12 minutes for planning, let's assume. Still, you would be able to do about 3 sets for sure, right? Even you could have stayed away from the non-MCQs question, or the sets with the non-MCQs. You could have handled, already you could have handled, say, for example, you'd have got a good 45 minutes working time. Even a beginner gets good after planning for 10 to 15 minutes. You get about 45 minutes of working time. 45 minutes of working time, even at the rate of 15 minutes per set. Trust me, you are in a position to do about 3 sets. Or anybody was in a position to do about 3 sets. Just you have to get your timelines right. You should not panic by the overwhelming task. You need to understand ground reality. You need to understand about yourself, and then you need to perform from there. Right now, therefore, ambitious target for a beginner could be about 4 sets. Reasonable target for a beginner should be about 3 sets in this paper. After going through the paper, because there is a question paper, go through the question paper, decide that, okay, if I'm a beginner, reasonably about 3 sets. If I'm at the intermediate level, I should be all right now. So I'm be all right now. So all right now, definitely about 4 sets. About 4 sets I should have touched. May not be all questions in 4 sets, but definitely all right now, there was a time to do about 4 sets. Ambitious target could be about 5 sets. 5 sets could be an ambitious target here. If you're already an advanced kind of learner, all right now, 5 sets were doable for you, all right, because you are already at the advanced stage of your preparation, which means you finished kind of most of your marathons, just about last lecture left or no lecture left. All right, therefore, I did my marathons well. So I did my homeworks meticulously. Then I would say that, okay, 5 sets were doable. 6, all right, 6 or 7 could be ambition. All right, 6 or 7 should be the ambitious side, right? Now, therefore, I would rather say that, okay, from the beginner's perspective or intermediate learner's perspective or advanced learner's perspective, you need to set reasonable targets and move out from there. All right, move ahead from there. Okay, so that's in brief. Therefore, coming back to this might have taken less time as well, about 7-8 minutes. To put it to the perspective, of course, all right, now, so we may say that, okay, 1 or 2 easy sets, all right, but then 3 moderate and 3 were time consuming. There was just about 1 set which was kind of difficult, all right, where that ABCD were playing with that money sitting around a square table, right? Maybe that is the one which can be considered a little on the difficult side. Otherwise, the most of them moderate, time consuming. You can say that, okay, moderate and time consuming could be in between moderate and difficult, tending towards difficult. What is this moderate? Moderate could be tending between easy and moderate kind of, right? Yeah, something like that. All right, now that's what. So I would put it as, therefore, I may say that, okay, there were about 5 to 6 good doable sets out here based on your familiarity, your understanding, your backgrounds, right? And your strengths and weaknesses. There were about 5 to 6 doable sets out here. Right. Okay. So for somebody about aiming at 99.5 percentile, already aiming around that, all right, now today or tomorrow, whatever your goals, the set targets that you have set and moving towards it. In this particular set, you should have done about you should have done about you should have done about 24 attempts. Right now, that's a kind of attempts, maybe about 6 to 7 sets. If you want to get about 24 attempts, you should be tending somewhere towards complete 6 sets or 6 to 7 sets and score in the range of 63. Yeah, there will be a huge gap, as you might have already noticed, from 99.5 to 99. There will be a huge gap in the score. So even if somebody is expecting about 99, about 5 sets, about 5 to 6, tending between 5 to 6 sets and scoring scoring about 49, could be about 99 percentile here. So 98, which is the cutoff for most of the top B schools, most of the top IIMs, right? 98 percentile. If we consider this, about 16 attempts, which means tending between 4 to 5 sets to get my 16 attempts. Exactly 4 sets may be tight. All right, yeah, there are people who do exactly 4 sets. It depends from nature of the individuals. But to get about your 16 attempts, maybe you should be doing about 4 to 5 sets. 4 to 5 sets, right? That gives you a score of about 39. Somewhere about 39 should be about 98 percentile. And same goes with 95 percentile. 95 percentile, just about 4 sets should have been done. So therefore, the moment you want to get into the 95 and above, the game is about 4 to 6 sets, right? Now that's what you kind of understand it here. So those who are expecting about 80 percentile and 90 percentile, trust me, about 3 sets could have been done, right? About 80 percentile that you are expecting, which is not bad at this point or at this stage of your preparation. So 80 percentile is just about 3 sets. Somebody attempted about 3 sets, planned about 3 sets, still got about 1 or 2 questions wrong. But even if you are doing 3 sets, I'm not expecting that you are doing all the questions in 3 sets, maybe about three questions. And if one tricky or difficult questions can be left for some other day, right? Considering this, you'd have still got about 80 percentile and you will be moving upward from there, right? Based on your accuracy, etc. You would have moved upward of 80 percentile. I hope, now, so most of you made sense out of this particular discussion. So I will put it over to Shivam sir for the quant analysis. Thank you. Shivam sir, over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Hello and welcome to the quant section analysis of EOM 5. So this is the usual flow that we'll be following. We start with topic distribution. Here we try to understand how many questions were asked from individual topics. So the number of questions versus each and every topic. This will be followed by question mapping. So here we discussed individual question and try to categorize them in different levels, maybe easy, moderate but time consuming, difficult, or extremely difficult. Okay. Next is we'll discuss difficulty level analysis and expected attempts and scores on the basis of our difficulty analysis for the entire paper. And finally, we move to expected percentiles and the scores that are equivalent to those. So starting with topic distribution, this is how the QA section topic distribution looks like. Again, number having high weightage, there were 5 questions from numbers, 4 questions from time, speed, and distance, 3 questions from each of permutation, combination, ratio, proportion, and surds and indices, 2 questions from each of logarithm, progression, profit and loss, quadratic equation, and there are 1 questions from average, coordinate geometry, height and linear equation, mensuration, percentage, progression, quadratic equation, SICI, and time and work, offering 1 each per chapter. So this is how the topic distribution looks like. I would say a very balanced paper covering almost all the topics that we are studying. Okay. Now let us look at individual question mapping. So this is how the question mapping of easy questions look like. These are the doable questions in the paper and probably the most straightforward ones. Okay, so if we discuss question by question, the first question that was there in the paper was based on percentage increase and decrease. It was supposed to be a 25% increase, but by mistake it was done as a 25% decrease. So the question was by what percentage it should be increased now to get the expected value. So if you just start with values like 100, and we can work with that and get the answer very easily. Okay, so even a student with a very limited understanding of percentage but has a grip over increase and decrease can solve this question very easily. Maybe 40 to 50 seconds job. So I would classify this as extremely easy question. The next question was based on profit and loss. So here there was a ratio given between, there were two instances given first of all. So you try to sell at a certain price, you make a profit. You sell at another price, you make a loss, right? And the ratio of the profit and loss that you are making is given as 3:2. So you can simply compare the given ratio with 3:2 and try to get the value of CP. So this was also a doable question. Maybe you can solve this in 1 minute to 1 minute and 30 seconds. Numbers, there was one question based on 1 factorial, 2 factorial, 3 factorial, up till 100 factorial. There was an addition given, and the addition was supposed to be divided by 7 factorial. Now we should understand that any number, uh, 7 factorial and beyond that, okay, maybe 8 factorial, 9 factorial, 10 factorial, up till 100 factorial, all of them are completely divisible by 7 factorial, and therefore they doesn't leave any remainder. Okay, so the remainder that we get is the addition of 1 factorial to 6 factorial. So if you can simply list down the values from 1 factorial to 6 factorial and add them, you get your answer. There was a question on quadratic equation, a very typical and regular type of question where a person makes a mistake with the constant term, another person makes the mistake with the coefficient of x, and you have to find out the sum and product of the root. So a regular question, maybe such kind of questions are there in our material also. Quadratic equation, I like the way of asking the question over here. There was arithmetic mean of the roots, there was geometric mean of roots mentioned. Okay, so this simply gives you the sum and product of the roots, and then you can work with the required the question what was actually asked. Okay, one question based on replacement. That was also an easy and doable level question. Maybe you can take around 2 minutes and solve this question. There was a question on time, speed, and distance where upstream speed and downstream speeds were given. That was also an easy level question. What is a doable one? Permutation and combination. There was a question involving giraffe, elephant, rhino, where we were supposed to select at least one animal. Okay, so if you are familiar with the concept of at least one, selection of at least one, which is 2 raised to n minus 1, and selection of any number, which was 2 raised to n. Okay, if you just know 2 raised to n and 2 raised to n minus 1, you can solve this question. Very much straightforward question. Permutation combination, there was another question where there was an application of partition method. 24 marks were distributed among 6 questions. So if you just know how to distribute identical objects into distinct parts, it was a straightforward question and a doable one. Surds and indices, there was a question based on finding out the square root of the surd, where we were supposed to solve for the square root first, and then we can get the value of a by comparing the square root with the given expression. Numbers, there was one question based on HCF and LCM. That was also an easy question. And one question was based on logarithm. That is where we had to find out log of the product of A, B, C, D, E. That was also an easy question. So these are the questions that most of the students should try and solve in their first round. Okay, and if you can solve just these many questions, that still takes you to 80 percentile score. That we'll see in the upcoming slides. Okay, but these 11 questions also can help you achieve 80 percentile easily. These are the questions that I will classify as the moderate level question. So there was a question on surds and indices where the expression was given, and from the expression you need to find out the value of x and y, and basically once you get x and y, you have to find x plus y, the summation of the numbers. There was a question based on a ratio where the marbles were given. Now there were 3 different type of ratios given. One ratio was according to the color of marble, the second one was according to the size of marble, and the third one was according to the number of marbles that the individual possesses with them. Okay, so looking at these 3 ratio, what we need to do is we need to take the LCM of the sum of all the parts of the ratio. So if you can do that, you can solve the question over here. Next question was based on again a question based on ratio, the one where gold, silver, and platinum were mixed in certain ratio. Again, a doable question. All these questions can be done maybe between 1.5 to 2 minutes question, 2 minutes time limit. Okay. There was a question based on time and distance. Circular race, four friends were running around a circular track, and their speeds were given. So it was an LCM based question. We had to take the LCM of the time that they require to cross each other or meet each other. There was a question based on finding out the minimum value of an expression of a logarithm. Okay, it was just about minimum value of a polynomial. Okay, and if you can get the if you are familiar with the uh, minimum concept of a quadratic function. Okay, there was a quadratic polynomial given. If you can find out the minimum value, the maximum value of the polynomial, which will be the minimum value of the expression, right? And there was one question based on height and distance where two vertical flags were given. The angle of elevation was, I think, about 60 degree. And we had to find out the probability of having that particular angle. So it is the favorable length divided by the total length. The favorable length was, I think, coming out to be 5 and the total length was 10. So the probability was somewhere around 50%. That was the question on height and distance. These are the moderate level questions. There was a set of moderate question, but maybe some time consuming. Some questions were consuming more time. Right, these are the time consuming questions. There was a question based on numbers where the philanthropist was distributing pencils, erasers, sharpeners among the students, right? And these numbers were given in 4 digits, and you had to take the HCF of those 4 digit numbers, right? So this might take time if you are not aware about the concept involved in how to find out the HCF of larger numbers. This might end up taking a lot of time. Another question, again, a moderate level question with respect to the concept and the application, but might take more time because we had to find out the fifth year CI. Okay. Uh, the next question was based on ratio proportion, where three types of alcohol were given: methyl, ethyl, and propyl alcohol. This question might take a lot of reading time because maybe 4 to 5 lines were given in the question itself. So you have to understand those 5 lines. So that might take time. Otherwise, the question was easy and doable, right? But still, this will consume more time just because of the reading time that is involved. That was a progression-based question involving SN and QN. Now, here I find a tricky part about the question is that you might not be able to find a starting point as to where to start from. Okay, so that might take around 30-40 seconds for you to just get started. Once you start with Qn, you get Q7 followed by Q6 followed by Q5, and then you get on with the flow. So maybe you can solve this question within 2.5 to 3 minutes. There was one question based on coordinate geometry where equilateral triangle was involved. We had to find out the distance between the vertices. These are the difficult level questions. So these are the questions which are better avoided, or rather you should have solved at least avoided in the first round, and you can solve these questions, a few of these questions in the second round. So there was a question based on profit and loss where markup and successive discounts, both the concepts were mixed together. Okay, and along with the successive discount, there was a 35% flat discount. Okay, so there were two discounts, markup, and then finally whatever answer you get, you had to equate that with 30 because I think there was some expression which was equal to 30. You had to find out the value of the expression which is required. So it was involving some cross multiplication and equating the final value ultimately. There was one question based on numbers where we had 10 raised to 59 minus how many digits? 12 digit number, and you had to find out sum of digits. So might be a little challenging one. Time and work, there was a question based on finding out the number of cows that can graze the field for the infinite amount of time. Maybe you would not have seen such questions earlier, and that is why I would classify as a difficult level question. Once you understand the solution, maybe you can do it later on. But because this is the first time exposure for you, it can be considered as a difficult level question. Permutation and combination, there was one question based on chocolate distribution where exactly 3 students out of 5 were receiving odd number of chocolates. So there are certain constraints to be looked into, and that's why it would be a difficult level question. Uh, Time and distance, there were trains coming from opposite direction, same direction, and the third scenario is the person still stands still and we had to find out the time required for the train to cross the person. Now, if you don't know a specific concept that is involved here, right, this is based on AP and HP. Okay, if the speeds are in arithmetic progression, the time required is in harmonic progression. If you don't know the concept, you will really struggle to solve this question going by the traditional approach. Mensuration, there was a question based on, sorry, pardon the typo here. There was a question involving a cone inside the cylinder. Okay, and we had to find out the maximum surface area of the I think it was cylinder inside the cone, and we had to find out the maximum surface area of the cylinder. So again, a question involving maxima minima in geometry. I would classify that as difficult because multiple concepts involved. Quadrilateral, there was one question where four friends were given and four vertices of the rectangles were given. So there was a concept of OA square plus OB square is equal to OC square plus OD square. Again, application driven question. Uh, a lot of students might not be able to strike the right concept at the right time. There was a question based on numbers where hundreds digit and thousands digit were concealed, and it was given that the number is divisible by 7. Again, there were a lot of possibilities involved in this case, and that is why, given the test pressure and the limited time in which you are supposed to solve this question, this can be classified as a difficult level question. And these are the extremely difficult questions, at least for me. Okay, I mean, considering the test taking perspective. Okay, there was a surds and indices based question where square root of a surd was to found out, and I hope you would have seen the expression which was there inside the square root. So overall, very lengthy and time consuming question, I would say. Time and distance, there was a question based on father and son. Now there is a unique concept which is involved in this question. Okay, and once you understand this concept, because I'm sure you might not be exposed to this concept till now. Okay, but once you understand this concept which is involved in this question, later on you can try to solve such questions. And there was a linear equation based question where there were 4 articles, so total of 4 variables, and only 2 equations could be made, right? So after are done, we had to work with option and think of different possibilities as to how we can get integral solutions. So this was again a time consuming. Students might not be able to strike the right approach to this question as well. So that's the extra difficult question for me. Now this is a summary of whatever question mapping that we have discussed. So the first slide that I showed, this one. Okay, this was the slide of easy level questions. So there were around 12 questions here. The next slide, moderate, 6 of them, moderate, 5 of them, and difficult questions, 8, very difficult, 3. These are the total number of questions. Now, we expect you to solve most of the questions from easy and moderate ones. Okay, and these are the questions that you should be solving in your first round while taking the quant section. So out of 12, questions are doable. So around 90% of the questions should be done from this 90 to 95%, and that is why we expect around 11 attempts from these 12. Moderate level questions, again, most of these could be solved, and we are expecting you to solve 5 of them out of 6, right? These are the expected attempts considering a 98 percentiler in mind. Okay, moderate but time consuming, we still expect you to solve half of these because these were not extremely challenging questions, just that they might take a little longer. Difficult questions, maybe a 98 percentiler or a well prepared student should still be able to crack 3 of these questions. Very difficult, we strictly ask you to avoid these questions because that will consume a lot of time. Okay, so out of 34, all in all, we can expect around 22 attempts from a well prepared student who falls in the range of 98 to 98.5 percentile. Now, if I had watched our simulation based video, right, let me tell you this 11 and 5, look at this 11 and 5, these are the 16 questions that you should be attempting. Okay, and if you only attempt these 16 questions, then also you'll land up on 90 percentile. Okay, these are the questions that you should be solving while doing the simulation. The question, these 12 questions, and this 6 questions which are of moderate question, plus these 5 questions which are moderate but time consuming, right? So in simulation round, that is 50 minutes, and one section you can try and attempt again after taking the paper. So in that particular round, you should be focusing on these 16 questions. I mean, this 11, this 5, and this 11, this 6, and these 5 questions. Okay, these are the questions you should be focusing on the during the simulation round. And these are the expected attempts, accuracy, and number of correct versus incorrect. So as discussed in the previous slide, 22 are the number of expected attempts based on the statistics given. Out of 22 questions, if we expect around 85% to 90% accuracy, we should expect around 19 or 20 questions to be right, 3 incorrect, which takes you to 55 marks as net expected score, and that is the score equivalent to 98 percentile. Right? I was discussing about the easy level questions only. So if you just look at the previous slide, the easy level questions are 12. Okay, if you just take these 12 questions and do not do anything else inside the paper, still if you get 10 correct and 2 incorrect, which is 30 minus 2, 28, you'll still get 80 percentile. Okay, only by solving the easy level question. And if you mix the easy and the moderate ones, which is 12 plus 6, 18, and if you get 15 out of these correct, 15 out of these 18 correct, that makes you reach 45 minus 3, which is 42, which is equal to 90 percentile. Okay, 95 is placed at 48, and people who are targeting higher should definitely crack some more questions out of the difficult ones and the moderate but time consuming ones. Okay, and they can get 98 at a score of 58, 99.5 at a score of 63, and 100 percentile is placed at 71. So that's it from my side. I'll hand it over to Vijita ma'am. Ma'am, please continue with your section.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a discussion of a much easier verbal section. I'm sure all of you are, happier. You came out of writing this mock probably with smiles because verbal finally must have brought you some good returns. So certainly overall an easier section, all right? Or if you want to think of it the other way around, perhaps you are better equipped to deal with it now, maybe with the kind of reading that you've done, with the understanding that passages should be taken very carefully, that you cannot jump into reading multiple things and solving questions quickly. All of this understanding should be giving you better insights, should have given you better insights, and therefore I'm sure it must have been a much better experience. Okay, so all of these things do matter. The fact that you've been analyzing, the fact that you've looked at simulation, several such things. Okay, so let's look at what the paper was like. Overall, yes, no difference here, except in the fact that we decided to bring a slight flavor here of CAT 2009 to 2013. Of course, logical continuation began years ago. It began somewhere around 2004 CAT. But since 2013, we've not seen logical continuation as a specific question type. So we've decided to bring it back because it is an extremely critical question type. If at all the format is to be changed anywhere, if CAT decides to introduce any new question type, there are very high chances that a logical continuation question could return, could be posed simply because of the skills that it tests, simply because of the nature of the question and what thought process is required for you to crack this. Okay, so 3 logical continuation questions. I'm sure it was a pleasant surprise. Not so difficult overall. So the really difficult sectional here, I would say, was the parajumbles. The passages, all of the passages were fairly easy reads, none that was very heavy or very dense, unlike probably the last 2 mocks that did have passages that were fairly heavy, right? So no specific instruction on you should have settled for just this passage or the other one. Generally, most of these, except the one on WTO, which required some careful reading, which was also lengthier, I thought most other passages were fairly direct and could be easily read, right? The out of context was the surprise here. I hope you people got into that if you and took those questions. They were actually absolute sitters because despite the difficult language, I think one or two of them, one of them had really difficult language, But you could very easily figure out that there was this one sentence which stood out very clearly as a main idea mismatch. Something that is so fundamental when it comes to out of context. You first look for the main idea mismatch. There's a sentence that does not continue the main idea, and here it is. All right. So very easy. And the fact that there were only 4 sentences for every out of context question, not 5 like you've seen in the other exams, that made it all the more easier. The tough part here was the parajumbles bit, because not only were the sentences slightly abstract, the language was a little abstract, but more than that, the connections were difficult to establish. You had, I think, in almost every question, you had that one sentence that you didn't know where to place. Is this to be placed at the start? Is this to be placed at the end? You didn't really know that. So definitely a tricky one. Logical continuation, the ones who finish your verbal logic lectures, the ones who understand what the approach is, you will have realized that at least 2 of these were pretty direct and straightforward and could be done. Okay. So overall, I would want to regard this sectional as a moderate one. Moderate to difficult, but more leanings towards moderate, because you have a big chunk of questions that can be termed moderate. Okay, a quick understanding of the various passages. So the first one, a very contemporary one. So that's why I say that wouldn't have been a difficult read for you. People are reading so many articles these days. So at some point, articles and editorials, at some point you will have come across this, the discussion of how digital technology is being used by our governments to combat COVID-19 these days, to keep a check on people, to monitor them. But then they are also raising concerns of informational privacy and a much greater concern, which is that of the intrusion into our autonomy, our bodily integrity, our dignity, and our sense of equality, because these things can be very easily shared and very easily monitored. All right. So very interesting read, I'm sure. So it's more to do with policy making, how there needs to be a law that defines all of this. And the best part was it had just about 500 words, very easy, 5 questions, and all of the questions. The first question, main idea related question, the main idea itself, very easy one. And the moment you find one easy question, your confidence is built in a certain, RC, isn't it? So there were, of course, 2 difficult questions. There was that inference one, which was a little challenging because it was very difficult for you to locate that one particular option. Where does this come from? Where can I figure out this unknown bit from? There was that unknown word. But other than that, the second inference, the 4th question, was also challenging. Both the inferences were challenging, but the logical structure question and the main idea related question, these were very easy, easy to moderate, and definitely it would have given you some return on your reading, because you're not investing a lot of time. One, the language is fairly contemporary. The length is not too much. Okay. Next. The next one was the easiest one. Anyone who did not take this should go back and ask yourself, go and look at this passage again and ask yourself, why didn't I take this passage? This should have been the first passage that I jumped into, because despite its length, it's a very easy one to relate to. Easy because a lot of these things we are familiar with. We've heard these names, and we've heard people talking about, India. So the foreigners, the Greeks talking about India. At some point or the other in history, we would have come across this. So you relate to these things. Despite the length, it was a very easy read, and you'll find the wonderful returns on your investment of time. At least 2 questions that are easy. There were 2 difficult questions, right? One logical structure and that one inference. But overall, something that you could have gotten into, even if it meant that you left out one question because you're confused with that, or you left out 2 questions because you were a little confused with that. Okay. Next. Environment and marine biology. Now, when you start reading this passage, the first few lines, it looks very cluttered. It has a lot of jargon, at least some jargon used in the first few sentences. So you might get this feeling that I am not going to understand this. But the moment you get through a few of the examples, the main idea surfaces very clearly. All right, you understand what exactly we are talking about, which is again, reiterated by the author later, right? So you had to be a little patient here. If you just read the first few lines and let go of it, then you wouldn't, take this. 4 questions only, but a very short read, just about 450 plus words, 460 or so. So really something you could, invest your time in. If you had managed the jargon, if you decided to, skip the jargon and get to the main idea, get to the point that is being made, you could very easily deal with this. So 4 questions only. Yes, you had 2 difficult questions, but there was definitely an easy and a moderate question. Okay. The fifth RC, post-truth, something that is very relevant in these times, something that you should actually know about. You should be understanding terms like this. Post-truth was the word of the year last year. Was it 2019? Yes, it was the word of the year. So the use of post-truth by a lot of people who are trying to create propaganda, how they misuse it, use or rather misuse it to their advantage, politicians and people who are promoting ideology, etc., versus what should be the stand or the use of post-truth by scientists. All right, and the example of Ram Setu made it pretty clear. So wasn't difficult at all, though the first paragraph defined post-truth and went on to talk about it. Later, the moment you had this example coming up, you could very easily relate to it. 500 words only, that's hardly anything, any lengthy read. Certainly something you could have gotten into, okay? There were 3 moderate questions and 2 difficult. So if you actually look at what has been, the previous passages discussed, you'll find that almost all of them had 1 or 2 difficult questions. So not that all 5 questions are absolute sitters or moderate. You did have 1 or 2 difficult questions in every RC, all right? Finally, WTO and India. India standing at the WTO, makes you feel very bad when you actually read that passage and realize, okay, this is India's international stature. But slightly heavy because there are a lot of facts and a lot of, economic jargon also that's brought in. So not a very smooth read. Okay, so probably in terms of passage and the denseness of ideas, this was the most difficult one. Okay, and I think by now we've realized anything related to dense economics or anything that uses technical jargon connected with economics can be difficult, right? 5 questions and a lengthy one too. So not something that you could easily read and finish. Okay, and you'll find that the first 2 questions are difficult and the other 3 are moderate. There was this phrase-based question, not a challenging one. You could very well read the lines preceding it subsequently and figure out what it means. Okay, so overall, yes, though all the passages have 1 or 2 difficult questions, something that you could have easily gone through. You could probably have first taken up that Greeks and history passage, and then your choice could have been anything, the sociology, the idea of post-truth perhaps, or even the first one, the first one is also very contemporary and not difficult at all. So 3 passages could certainly be done by most of you. And then maybe a few minutes that you would spend in this VA sectional, particularly if you had just scanned the 3 sectionals, maybe looked at 1 question of parajumble and 1 question of out of context, you would realize that the out of context were really easy. So the moment you scan or spend 1 or 2 minutes looking at those question types, and then you decide what to take, 2 questions at least out of context shouldn't have been difficult. Okay. Logical continuation is up to people who have understood this question type, who solved this question type, because there's a certain approach. Okay, the regular approach of eliminating something because it is, let's say, seen in the passage. So your CR, critical reasoning or summary, tells you that whatever is the option, correct answer of summary is something that should be seen or covered in the passage, right? The paragraph should cover it. But here you're looking for a logically connected new idea. You're taking it ahead. So any sort of going back to ideas stated, regressing in any way, these are not things that are correct when it comes to logical continuation. So the language employed in all 3 were not very difficult, though of course out of context gave you moderate to difficult language. At first glance it would feel like, acha, ye to bahut abstract language hai. But not really. The first one, though it had slightly difficult language, was very easy. As I told you, the main idea, mismatch, stood out very clearly. Okay, so certainly something that that is food for thought for you people. A lot of analysis to be done. Please do the simulation of all of these questions, particularly the easy and moderate ones, and you will find that there were 4 questions that we've identified as easy. about 16 questions that are moderate. So you'll be expected to take at least 14, 15 of these questions. So go back and relate. It's not that you understand this analysis and you let go of things. It is about drawing, drawing lessons from this analysis, going back and attaching them, relating what we've said about an easy question or a difficult one or an easy passage to the actual questions. That's what we mean by simulation. So unless you do something like that, you will never know on what basis is this judgment being done. How do I judge that a question is an easy one? How do I make that selection? In all of the test taking, classroom tests that you take, this is what we try to get you to relate to. Selection, how do you select the right questions given the limited time? So about 14 questions that were difficult, right? Maybe a 2, 3, or even a 4, 5. So one of you could find a certain question type easy. So when I mark something as difficult, it is because they had very close options. There were some confusions that 2 options would create here, right? Okay. So what is the expected attempt for 98 percentile, roughly around 21, 22 questions that you get, that you take at an 80% accuracy? We're looking at an expected score of about 51, all right? So if 51 is our 98 percentile, look at the rest of it. Let's look at the lower bit first. So at a mere 29 questions, I could get an 80 percentile. Now that's not too much to ask for. 29 correct can be easily, got. 36 questions for a 90 percentile. 36, again, just about a 10, 12 questions. 43 questions for a, 43 score. Right, let me just correct myself. So 36 score, okay. 43 is the score for a 95 percentile. 51 is your score for 98, as we just spoke of it. 55 for a 99, and then the jump begins. And then the tremendous jump begins, and that is what distinguishes a 99 percentiler from a 99 point something percentiler. So look at the jump here. From a 55 to a 74, 99.50 plus is a 74, right? And a 92 percentile, a 100 percentile is at a score of 92, all right? Let's look at what this makes our, overall scores and percentiles as. So an 80 percentile, we spoke about VARC being 29, QA being 27, and DILR being 20. A total of 84, a score of 84 will fetch you an 80 percentile. A 90 percentile is at a score of 103, which is 36 in VARC, 41 in QA, and 27 in DILR. 95 percentile is a score of 43 in VARC, 48 in QA, 32 in DILR, and a total of 120. 98 percentile is 51 in VARC, 55 in QA, 39 in DILR, and a 143, a total score of 143. 99 percentile would be a 55 in VARC, 99.5 percentile is 74 in VARC, 63 in QA, 63 in DILR, and a total of 163. All right. So from 99.50 to your 100 percentile, you can look at the difference, right? So 92 in VARC, that's close to almost all questions. 71 in QA, 71 in DILR. This would fetch you an 100 percentile. So a score of 215 and above would be your 100 percentile. All right. So yes, start targeting higher things. Not really easy, not really very challenging. All you need to do is the right kind of analysis, the right kind of simulation. We've given you enough guidelines there. So please do make the best use of every mock and your analysis of every mock. All right. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you. I'm going to stop here. Thank you.